Hello all and welcome back to Finominal UK. In today's video we're going to be carrying out a full portfolio review of the Aberdeen MPS Portfolio 5. So this is one of their more adventurous MPS portfolios, and this is based off of their most recent fact sheets and holdings data as of the 31st of October this year. With these holdings, I was then able to head over to my dashboard within Finominal, create portfolio, and then upload those holdings we just saw. However, based off of these current holdings, we can see that some of them have launched more recently, as we've only got data as of December 2023. However, within Finominal, we are actually able to extend the history via benchmarks, so we actually get an additional, in this case, about 3 years worth of data, so fantastic. Now, let's head over to the Portfolio Analyzer. So the Finominal platform will initially select a suggested benchmark, which we can see for this portfolio is the FTSE Developed Index. So before we go any further, let's just double check this just to make sure it is the most appropriate benchmark for this portfolio, which, as we can see here for this particular one, it's been tracking quite closely, is what I would say, to this particular index. So I'm quite comfortable with the benchmark selection for this one. One thing to note though, as we are basing this off of the current holdings data, the actual compound annual growth rates and performance figures may not be as accurate for the total performance of the portfolio. However, to get around this, before recording this video, I actually was able to convert the cumulative performance since inception. The compound annual growth rate equivalent equates to 9.2%, and based off of the last 5 years of data, the compound annual growth rate for Aberdeen's MPS Portfolio 5 actually equates to 12.6%. So this is Aberdeen's specific published data off of their since inception, so since December 2014, and we can see that this has actually underperformed against the FTSE Developed Index over the last 5 years. So 5-year CAGR for FTSE Developed, 13.2% versus Aberdeen's of 12.6%, and since inception, 9.2%. In regards to fees, we can see the benchmark has done this at a cheaper rate at 0.12% versus 0.53% for the Aberdeen portfolio. The Aberdeen portfolio has seen less volatility though, I will note, as well as a lesser max drawdown. But let's head over to holdings benchmarking. So within the portfolio analyzer of Finominal, you can actually benchmark each underlying holding against a benchmark index, and then how that's underperformed or overperformed over the short to medium term, as well as since inception. But I'm going to brush over this, going to move over to asset classes and markets, as of course it would be great to see what this portfolio is actually invested in, So let's have a look. Okay, so mainly in equities, as we would assume, though we can see just over 43% in the US, so not quite as much as US equity exposure as the benchmark, the FTSE Developed Index. Though we've also got exposure to the UK, just over, just under, should I say, 23%, as well as Japan 5.5% and China at 3.6%. Mainly investing in large cap funds and stocks, though also we're seeing just over 25% in small cap, with the remaining amount in mid. And we've also got just under a 7% allocation in emerging markets as well. But looking to the actual sectors this portfolio is invested in, we can see an underweight in information technology, which again may be attributed to that decreased US equity exposure against its benchmark, I would say. And I do also note overweights in the other sectors as well as utilities. Moving over to alpha and factor exposures. So looking at return-based factor exposures, overall it seems that the low volatility and quality factors seem to be the main equity factor exposures over time for this particular portfolio. Looking at alpha attribution, based off of the current holdings data, we can see cumulative alpha has been 11.72%, with alpha consistency 3 out of the last 5 years. I won't mention too much on alpha, as mentioned, just because it's based off of the current holdings data, though as we saw at the start of the video, this particular portfolio has underperformed against its benchmark. We can also look at holdings analysis, how each of those underlying holdings have their corresponding betas to factors, commodities, bonds, equities, and the US dollar as well. But I am going to have a look at risk, specifically drawdown and stress testing, just to see how this particular portfolio has handled in periods of drawdown. So overall, it does seem to be quite similar, I would say, to the FTSE Developed Index. And if we actually replicate these returns, to go back in time as highlighted in prior videos, again, we're seeing this further with this sort of tracking of the index, I would say, very closely. We can actually look at fee reduction now, where how can we take this particular portfolio and replace those funds with cheaper funds. So within Finominal, we're able to do this, and replacing those funds, we can actually see we was able to decrease the annual fees 0.53% to 0.15%, and had also seen a slightly higher performance as well. So fantastic to see. But I would probably say that brings me to the end of this review for this particular portfolio. So just to summarise, overall we're looking at a portfolio that has underperformed against its benchmark, not only on a current holdings basis, but also from a fact sheet perspective as well. Also quite expensive in comparison to the benchmark, I would say. And for an MPS range, this is meant to be seeing some form of active management, which, as we can see from this particular performance benchmarking chart, I'm not seeing straight away, is what I would say. But that brings me to the end of this analysis video. I do hope you found it helpful and informative, and if there are any funds or portfolios you would like me to review, please do let me know in the comments. But other than that, please do like and subscribe, and she'll see you in the next one. Thanks all.